Okay, welcome everyone. This is Jason Tallarico, One Timers, and we're going to go through questions 4 and 5 from the 2022 February bar exam. The way we're going to do this is I'm going to go through, now I've not seen these fact patterns. I don't even know what subject question 5 is. I do know what subject question 4 is, but I have no idea about question 5. I'm going to go through that one first. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to read the fact pattern slowly and carefully. I'm going to, just like I would on the bar exam. Now, one thing I must emphasize that I have not been doing is I have not been going through the fact pattern multiple times, only because of time constraints here. But on the actual exam, I would go through the fact pattern multiple times because as you'll see, you'll pick up more things each time you go through it. All right, so let's take a look at question 5. And this is exactly the way I teach my students how to do it. It's exactly the way that I do it. It's exactly the way I recommend that you do it. All right. So it says Landco sued Arnold and Betty personally. I don't know why they go out of their way and say personally for damages for breach of the lease. Huh. And Betty sued Arnold. So we got L versus A and C. Okay. And then B versus A. So, I mean, that would be kind of like a cross claim, but it looks like they're 2 separate lawsuits. And they say personally, and now there's A and B. I have to think this is somehow related to partnerships or agency or something like that, some kind of tort, breach of the lease. I mean, that could be, real property. So right now I got all these things going through my head. I don't know exactly what's going on, and it's okay, but I'm starting to get an idea. I know it's a civil suit. So on what theory or theories might Arnold be found personally liable for damages to Landco? Same question with number 2, and it's Betty personally liable for damages. And then, so it's L versus A, L versus B, and then A versus B. Okay, so I see what's going on here. L versus A, L versus B, and then A versus B. So Betty's on the wrong side of 2 lawsuits. All right. Yeah, Betty's on, okay. So Arnold and Betty agreed to launch a business selling a durable paint that Arnold had developed and patented it. Okay, so they agreed to launch a business. So we have right now, we just have a partnership. I mean, it looks like they're just agreeing to like partner up here. They agreed to share all profits and act as equal owners. And that's the definition of a partnership, is when you share profits and losses equally. Same thing with marriage. Marriage is technically a partnership between 2 people in California. It's defined as a civil contract. And again, this is also a civil contract. All right. Betty agreed to contribute $100,000 to the business venture. Now, it's something important because the question is, does Betty get her money back, or is she more than a 50-50 partner for contributing the money? And the answer is no, but she is entitled to reimbursement upon dissolution or disassociation. So, all right. Although I think outside creditors will probably get first priority over inside creditors. The reason why she's called an inside creditor is because she's part of the corporation. Outside creditors mean people that don't deal with it. Okay. I don't know if that's going to play out later, but it's an issue that I've seen tested quite often on essays. Arnold agreed to contribute his patent for durable paint. So he's actually adding something of value there. He doesn't necessarily need to. He could, provide money or services or whatnot. And it seems like he is going to chip in with his patent. Arnold told Betty that he thought the patent was worth $100,000. All right, so whether it is worth $100,000 or not, people tend to overvalue their property all the time and their ability. He did not tell Betty that he previously tried to sell the patent to several reputable paint companies, but was never offered more than 50. All right, well, I mean, I've never been offered $13 million for my company, but that's what I think it's worth. Doesn't mean he's lying, but at the same time, maybe he should have mentioned that to her, like, hey, I can't see how that's going to play out now other than like breach of a fiduciary duty, which would probably go to call number 3. All right. Arnold and Betty agreed that Betty was responsible for market research and marketing. Okay, and that's probably her skill. She's put in $100,000. Betty, okay. So Betty's putting in the money. She's doing the work, research, and okay. Arnold will be responsible for incorporating the business, which takes about 2 seconds, and taking care of any other steps needed to start the enterprise. I'm responsible for incorporating the business. All right. And take care of any other steps needed to start the enterprise. I don't know what else he needs to do. It seems like, well, seems like he's just putting in the patent and she's running with it. Okay. All right. So, and it looks like they have the intent to incorporate. So I'm thinking to myself, is this going to be a corporation, de jure, de facto? Are they going to be stopped from somehow assorting the corporate veil? I don't know. Arnold first located a building within which to operate the business. All right, and that's what he needs to do to get things started. All right, so that's what he's doing, the other steps. Owned by landlord and entered into a 1-year lease in the name of Durable Paint Incorporated. Okay, well, they're not incorporated. Believe it or not, this lease, I think, would technically be void because there was a real property MBE question that was released where they made the deed out to the corporation that had never come into existence. Well, that deed's void. It's the same thing as making a deed to a dead person. It's void. It has to be somebody in existence, and the corporation is not in existence. So I would think the same thing applies to the lease. And Arnold, how would you sort this out? Because they're asking about the lease in one of the call, like the call said, they sued for damages for breach of the lease. So who's on the hook for the lease? Is it Durable Paint, or is it Arnold, or is it Betty? Well, Durable Paint did quote unquote sign it. Arnold entered into, so he'd be a promoter. And when you talk about promoters are people that get the company started. They enter into contracts and on behalf of the corporation that's not yet to be formed. Why the corporation hasn't been formed right now, I don't know. But Arnold would probably be personally responsible, even though he didn't sign his actual name to it, which kind of seems odd. I think maybe that'll come up later. And then because Betty is his partner, I'm assuming she'd be partly responsible for that too, because they're both in it as partners. And of course, Durable Paint, the corporation itself, is not asking the call to question, so I don't need to worry about their liability. Subsequently, after Arnold took the necessary steps, they were incorporated. Okay, so now the question is they ratified it or adopted it? And that means, are they taking the benefits of the lease? Are they going to move into the building? Is the corporate, and in that case, the corporation would be on the hook for it. And of course, Arnold still, don't forget, there's no novation here. And absent a novation, Arnold is still going to be personally liable, assuming that, he's the one who signed it. I don't know if they hold him personally liable, but Arnold might be personally liable. The corporation would reimburse him, or maybe enter an innovation with the landlord. But the landlord doesn't have to allow Arnold off the hook. Because don't forget, Arnold may have personal assets and the company may not be worth anything. So that's why you pierce the corporate veil to go after the individual. Does everyone understand how that works? So One-Timers itself, I have personal assets and One-Timers has its own assets. Those are separate entities. Now, let's just say One-Timers had no money, or when I originally started One-Timers, it didn't have any money or it had very little capital to start with. So if you went after One-Timers for, like, say, a printing contract, you couldn't hold, you weren't going to get water out of a stone. So you would try to pierce the corporation, piercing the corporate veil to try and find me personally responsible. So that may be what's going on here, depending on whether or not there were anything. Now, this is a contract. So when you're dealing with a contract, you know who you're dealing with. A quick search of the Secretary of State would be able to find out, hey, Durable Paint's not in existence, and that would prompt the landlord to ask questions. They were incorporated. At the corporation's first board of directors meetings, I don't know who the board is comprised of, Arnold and Betty were named as the sole directors and officers. Okay, fine. So they have fiduciary duties to the corporation. And it looks like each other. During that meeting, they voted for the corporation to assume all rights and liabilities for the lease and to accept assignment of Arnold's patent rights. Okay, so now they've expressly adopted it. And there is a difference between adoption and ratification. It's killing me. I gotta find out what it is. Give me 1 second. Corporations. So this is corporations. An adoption is, ratified is when it, the difference is that a corporation adopts a pre-incorporation contract while they ratify it after formation. So it looks like it's ratified. So that's a little tip. Not that it's, I mean, it's insignificant, by the way. I just like to be extremely precise. A corporation adopts a pre-incorporation. So that means they adopt, while a corporation ratifies a contract that was entered into after formation. Oh, okay. So this would be an adoption. They did adopt, excuse me. Okay. So they are expressly adopting it here. Express adoption. All right. Over the next 6 months, the durable paint, they faced unforeseen and costly manufacturing and supply problems. Okay, that happens. It's funny, it says unforeseen, but that's, to me, it's completely foreseeable. At the end of the first 6 months, they had exhausted all of its capital and was 2 months behind on rent. To make matters worse, a competitor developed a far superior product, making its patent effectively worthless. They have no other assets. Wow. Landlord sued them personally for damage to breach of the lease, and Betty sued Arnold. That's because he told, okay, so call number 3 does seem like the easiest one, by the way. All right, let's take a look at call number 1. On what theories might Arnold be found personally liable? Well, promoter liability would be to begin with, because Arnold's the one who, promoter liability. They're asking only about his personal liability. This is interesting because I can't find any other reasons. I mean, the part, they did incorporate it. Wow. I mean, I guess piercing the corporate veil. I understand this essay gave a lot of people fits, and now I see why. For anybody who took the 2022 February exam, feel free to share your thoughts with me about call 1. I'd love to hear it. Because I'm seeing promoter liability, piercing the corporate veil, and somehow we have to discuss adoption, but that would go to the corporation being liable, not Arnold being found personally liable. And Betty, wow, this is really interesting. This is definitely not an easy question in terms of like, I'll tell you this much though, I would put things, I know that I'm gonna have to discuss the adoption. I know that, somehow we're gonna get the piercing the corporate veil. I just imagine that. Anybody have somebody want to add to it? Lauren, raise your hand properly, by the way. Learn how to use Zoom.
I don't know how to find my hand on the computer.
Well, take a look.
So I was looking around for the hand. So does anybody know, like when you look into the computer app, the computer like thing, when it's on the laptop, where's the hand raiser?
Lauren, you ever hear the expression that if you need a helping hand, sometimes look at the end of your sleeve?
No, not at all.
Well, try looking at the end of your sleeve. Look at your keyboard, look at your screen, and you'll be able to see it. I think in the reaction.
My keyboard? I see.
Hey Lauren, do you see where it says reaction on the bottom?
Yeah, I saw reaction, but I didn't see a hand. I saw applause and I saw
click on reaction. Please listen. Click on reaction.
Okay.
And at the very bottom of the box that pops up is raise hand.
Okay, I see clapping hand and I see thumbs up. That's it.
We'll put one of them up.
Expand your box so it's larger.
Is there a box there to expand? No, when I tap the box,
okay.
it
Lauren, okay, we're not doing this right now, Lauren. I'm sorry. I don't want to waste everyone else's time with your your Zoom. Okay, Lauren, if you have a question, what can I ask for you?
I was going to say something about the question 1 because that's what you're asking about.
Yes, go ahead, please.
The Arnold, he tried to sell the patent for $50,000, and he told, was it Betty, that it's
Lauren, let's stay on track.
I didn't.
Lauren, I'm asking about call number 1. Selling the patent would go to call number 3. I'm going to ask a very specific question. Let's talk about call number 1. How could he be personally liable to Landco? Lauren, you're muted. Hold on, Lauren. Okay, we can't have her speak. Anybody else want to add something about that? Anybody on call number 1? Corey, you took that exam, no? Let's hear what you got for number 1. And Eric, I'd like to.
Yeah, so for number one, I talked about promoter liability, absent novation, he'd be personally liable.
You said something about novation?
Absent a novation, he'd be personally liable.
Yeah, just because they adopted it doesn't
Right.
mean that there was novation. They just become liable as well. So he'd become primarily liable, just like an assignment in a sublease, or I'm sorry, a tenant in and an assignee. So the tenant is still personally liable, absent a novation, and the assignee is, so anyways, okay. Go ahead, Corey.
And I think that's really all I got on one. I didn't talk about piercing the corporate veil until two.
Yeah, I have to think somehow that's going to show up, whether you put it in number one or number two, I don't know. And I can't imagine why it would matter which one you put it in for right now. Erica, what about you? How did you go about putting this together?
I'm not sure if it was correct, but I had discussed that for the landlord to go after Arnold personally, I kind of talked about his as them being partners and him having apparent authority, like having the authority and then having the specific duties of the partnership to enter into the lease.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, yeah, okay, that would make sense. The authority to Landco, and you know, he would have the apparent authority. I can see that. Because Landco would assume that Arnold, there's no reason not to assume. I mean, his name's pretty much on the billboard, or on the door or whatever you want to call it. So okay, I can see that apparent authority. I'm having a real tough time distinguishing between clause 1 and clause 2 in terms of how you're going to pierce Betty. I mean, Betty, I can see how you put piercing the corporate veil there. And their partner, I mean, they're partners, or at least they were partners when he signed the lease. So I see what's going on. That's where Arnold would be a partner. Betty would also. So I would go into partnerships, because don't forget, here's how you know how to answer certain questions. The fact pattern will always bring up the issues you need to discuss. And remember then, and the second sentence says, they agreed to share all profits and act equally as owners. That tells me I need to discuss partnerships and how they're actually a partnership. Whether you call that in call number 1 or call number 2, I'm not really concerned about that, because as I've mentioned numerous times before, it doesn't really, where you put things really doesn't matter. And I also know that somehow I'm going to have to discuss how Betty contributed the $100,000. And that's where I might go in number 2. So what I would do right now is, because I'm a little stumped, but what I would do is I'd go back to the fact pattern and start putting all the pieces in place, which is why it is so unbelievably important to go back to the fact pattern 3-4 times. I mean, God, you have to at least do it twice. You'd be doing yourself a disservice. So, because I'll start seeing the picture a lot clearer. So now when I see that she could agree, now I see that, okay, the partnership's good, because Arnold was a partner, Betty was a partner. There you go. Partnership probably goes to number 2, because at the time the contract was signed, she was a partner. She was not protected by the corporate entity. Got it. Now, the fact that she agreed to contribute the $100,000, can that money be used to pay Landco? And the answer is yes, because they're what's called an outside creditor. She's an inside creditor. She doesn't get paid back her $100,000 until everyone else on the outside, all the creditors, get paid back first. So now I can see, it's starting to become a lot clearer now. Is everyone kind of seeing that little by little? Because at first it was not easy to put things together. But again, and as many of you might understand, it still takes me 2 or 3 times. And Lauren, please, with the chat. Lauren, please. All right. I'm trying to be patient with you. I'm trying to be nice with you. I don't need you to keep doing the chat thing, trying to get my attention. Now I understand, hey, we have the $100,000. It's going to be, she's going to be personally liable for that. It's going to come ahead of any money that the corporation has, because she, as a partner, general partner, is liable and she's sharing profits and losses. Now, in terms of the patent, that's going to go to call number 3 because he breached a fiduciary duty to her. And as partnerships, you have fiduciary duties to each other. So I guess you could sue him for, I don't know, some type of fraud, some type of misrepresentation. But really, what's that really worth? Yeah, he probably did need to disclose it, but I mean, how you come out with the conclusion is really not relevant. Okay. And again, like the fact that she's responsible for market research and taking care of the other startups. Okay, so that's just her. She's dedicating services into the partnership. Question is, does she get reimbursed for those? And the answer is no, she's not going to get any reimbursement because that's part of the partnership. You guys contribute money, services, value, labor, and you get out of it whatever profits you have. If you don't have any profits, that's kind of like the world telling you that your services really weren't valuable. Okay, we got the lease signed, but the lease was signed on behalf of the partnership, even though it mentions the corporation, but the corporation wasn't really formed. The fact that they expressly adopted it, all right, doesn't mean there's no novation there. Exhausted all its capital. So the corporation has no more money, so now you can come after them personally. Aha. And 2 months behind on rent, so they're going to be responsible for the rent, both Arnold and Betty. And I can't imagine the rent being more than $50,000. Well, now the patent is worthless. If the patent was worth $50,000, then at least you have some assets which Arnold could draw from to pay his half of the 2 months of rent that was be behind. All right, and I think that's, I can't imagine anything else. Now, Lauren, if you'd like to ask your question, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But if we're talking about a specific topic, let's stay within the lane. I'm not asking anything specific right now. But if I ask you about call number 1, let's not go off on call number 3 and about a different essay, because I'm trying to keep things focused so that people understand what's going on. But go ahead, Lauren.
Well, I was asking about call number 1. And I don't know why you're asking about other questions. When I said call number 1, I was talking about, he said his stock was worth $100,000
let's not
in the formation.
Lauren,
that is all part of the formation. It's all part of the same question.
Okay, gosh darn it. Lauren, if you could, please, let's talk, instead of using pronoun, you say he, I don't know if you're talking about the landlord, if you're talking about Arnold, I just want you to be specific on what you're talking about so we don't get lost. All right, so you said, go ahead. All right, we're not together. Okay, so I don't see how the fraud against Betty has anything to do with Lanco. Lanco doesn't care what they happen between them. Lanco only cares what happens between Lanco and the Arnold.
It wasn't, it's about the discussion, just the discussion in number 1. How can Lanco go after, oh God, where's the question? On what theory can Arnold be found liable to landlord? Well, if Betty tells, I don't know, if Betty complains about fraud, I didn't know how to handle it in the question when I first got it.
Okay, the fraud has nothing to do with Lanco. So that's out for call number 1. Lanco doesn't care. I mean, the suits between Lanco and Arnold has nothing to do with Betty. Anybody else have anything to add with this question? Christine, I know you took the exam, and anything else you see here? I mean, I think we pretty much covered everything. There's probably 1 or 2 little minor things that I would assume that kind of went by. I don't know about piercing the corporate veil. Now that I look back at it, I don't really see, I'd be very skeptical on putting that in. I
know I talked about it like briefly, but it was really more about whether it was about like the partnership and what liabilities they had as a partnership and why they would both be liable in each call of the question. So yeah, nothing that you didn't go over.
Partners do have a fiduciary duty to each other. They owe each other a duty of care. I don't see any conflicts of interest, any duty of loyalty. I just don't see that issue here. Boy, and I don't see much else. In fact, there's nobody stole a business deal. There's no voting trust or anything like that. No derivative actions. Of course, no insider trading. Distribution of assets, yeah. So, I mean, that's That's all I see here. And I would just go like, again, I'd go through the fact pattern and discuss each thing in order. And I'd put it in whatever call it would go to. Like Betty's 100,000, that's going to go to call 2. The $50,000, the patent, that goes to call 3. The 1-year lease signed on behalf of them and the express adoption, that you can put that in calls 1 or 2. I'd probably put it in call 1 just to start it off, because call 1 to me would seem like it's probably the most important. Call 2 has a few other issues, including about how the money is going to get paid out. And call number 3 really doesn't have much other than this, the breach of the fiduciary duties between the partnerships. So that's all I see there. Unless we have anything else to add to that, we're probably just going to move on. Everybody good? And this is probably gonna barely fill the hour, I'll tell you that much. Again, why I get so excited to see us select the answers, I want to see if there's anything here that I'm missing. I just don't see anything else. All right, so let me do this, and the recording now up. So